All right, I'm going to talk about how I discovered who my father's handler was. He was a Vatican level handler. This guy lived across the street from my father, and he had an alter personality of this Boy Scout like persona, this good guy like persona that they like to champion in the Vatican, so they appear like good guys. But in his heart, there was nothing but demons and pure evil. He liked to, he kept fire trucks, old, outdated fire trucks in front of his house that he would drive along in parade, so everyone will wave at him and honor him. He was supposedly like a volunteer firefighter at one point. But like I said, this is just a front for his Vatican and CIA activities. He had a Korean wife that moved in with a young son. He also did some business in China, and I'm guessing Korea too, because he married a Korean lady who had like a 10-year-old boy. And after a few years of living in the house, the lady came down with cancer, and the lady subsequently died. And the Koreans, the North Koreans, and I applaud them for what they've done. They went out of their way to get the child back to Korea, because that was not a good house to be in. That guy is pure evil, Vatican level CIA evil. But he has this front altar that's almost pathetically Boy Scoutish, this little boy altar. He opens his eyes real wide and puts on this little, idiotic, you could trust me like face. And they like to hide in plain sight. But let me describe what happened when I realized exactly who this man was. It was probably the beginning of March of 2013. And my wife dropped the girls off, and they were supposed to stay with me at my father's house for about a week. I had recently been let go from the Arboretum, so I didn't have to work. And so I was going to watch them for a week. So the night she dropped them off, she had to return to New Hampshire to get back to work, of course. And it snowed that night, and it snowed like 7 or 8 inches. And I remember that afternoon, around 10 or 11, I brought my children out sledding in the backyard. And we then went inside, changed the clothes, and about 1 o'clock in the afternoon, I started cooking lunch. And I was in there just for 5 or 10 minutes whipping up macaroni and cheese and hot dogs. And I was just about to finish up and dish this out for my children when my dad barges in. And he looks extremely frustrated. And he says something like, smells good, I'm hungry, or something. And I said something to the effect of, or he goes, I'm cooking myself something. And he kind of barges in and starts getting in my way, what seems to be like on purpose. So I kind of stand aside and I say, look, I've cooked enough for everybody. And I said, exactly, with all due respect, just give me a minute so I could feed the girls, and then we could eat too. And he said something like, no, you don't tell me what to do in my house, and I want tuna fish, or something idiotic. So he starts kind of crisscrossing the kitchen, grabbing what he needs to make his tuna fish. So I take a deep breath and I start, I just ignore him and I start trying to put the food on the plates for the girls. And once again, he goes out of his way to make this difficult. And I'm extremely frustrated at this point. They're probably blasting the house with electromagnetic energy, which is why he was so frustrated. And I say to the girls, I say, you see how your grandfather's behaving right now? He can't even wait for 1 minute for me to feed you guys lunch. It's more important for him to feed himself first. And I didn't know what else to do to get him to see his own behavior. And at that point, he crossed the room to where my girls were sitting at the table, and he hunches over one of my daughters. So his back is bent, and he hunches over, and he's sticking not only his face, but his finger in my girl's face. Now this is all body language that suggests aggression, and also the finger is a trigger finger too, and that's supposed to stimulate kind of anger. And so he kind of is projecting this anger instead of on me, onto my daughter. And he says something to the effect of, your dad thinks he knows everything, but he doesn't know anything. Now I felt really kind of angry at that point, mostly because he was in her face. But I took some deep breaths and I said, come on girls, we're gonna go eat downstairs in my little apartment down there in the basement. So I just grabbed some paper plates, I grabbed the food, and I kind of go downstairs just to get out of it. I don't want to react with any type of problem with him. So I walk downstairs, get out of his way. So like a minute goes by, and after a minute, he trudges downstairs and he says that I need to apologize to him in front of the girls for my behavior upstairs, for trying to reprimand him in front of the girls or something. And I said, no, you're being selfish, and you can't even wait for a minute for us to feed the children first before we eat. Someone's got to tell you about it. If you don't know that at your age, someone's going to have to tell you about it. I'm not apologizing. He goes, then you need to get out. Just take the girls and get out. And I said, are you crazy? I said, we had a snowstorm. There's 8 inches of snow on the ground. The girls just got here. I'm not going to pack up the girls after they just got here and take to the snow-covered streets, and do what? He goes, just bring them back to New Hampshire. I said, no, I want to see my children. I haven't seen my children for a while. I want to see them. They're supposed to stay here for a week, and Rachel needs a break. I said, what are you so selfish now? You're gonna don't even want to see your own grandkids? And he again freezes. He doesn't know what to say. And he turns and he trudges back upstairs. And again, another minute passes. And then we're finished, we're continue eating our food, And then he marches back downstairs, and he says, and he lets it slip because he's confused at this point. He says, Old Bill says, it's best to let things cool off. Now I'm going to pay for a hotel room, but you're going to have to pack up the girls and drive them to New Hampshire. And I said, New Hampshire's a 3-hour drive. We have a snowstorm. And I'm kind of frustrated right now. It's not the best idea, I don't think, to get in the car with 2 little girls when there's a snowstorm and take a 3-hour drive back to New Hampshire, even though the plan was for us to watch the girls here for a week. And I said, the hotel room is a good idea about letting things cool off. Why don't I bring them down the street to the hotel down the street where they have a pool, and I can bring them swimming. And instantly he goes, no, the deal is I will only pay for a hotel room if you go to New Hampshire right now. So those of you who are familiar with the program, what do you think they're going to try to do? get me all frustrated, turn up the weapons in the car, turn up the electromagnetic energy weapons in the car, with 2 little girls, with a snowstorm, send me on a 3-hour drive up to New Hampshire to look like an idiot. After my wife made plans, that I would watch the girls for a week while she could take some time off from working full-time and being a full-time mom. And when I was driving up there, of course, they would harass me the whole time in vehicles. Armies of the Vatican, CIA would just play games with the vehicles, try to force me off the road, tailgate me, swerve in front of me, just non-stop harassment games while they're hitting me with the electromagnetic energy weapons, while there's snow over the ground, with 2 little girls in the back seat. So I see where this is going. I said, no, I'm not doing that. I'm not driving up to New Hampshire right now. The roads are bad. I'm frustrated. And don't you even care about seeing your own kids, your own grandkids? And he marches back upstairs. And I give him 30 seconds. And I kind of follow behind him. And I walk into his office where he's on the phone, and he says he's not going for it on the phone. And he turned around, and he saw me standing there in his office, and you should have seen just the look of shame, and his face is just like, I got caught out, I know it. And he slowly lowers the phone without saying a word, and he hangs up. So I walk over to him, and I have anger with me, and I grab him by his face. I grab him by the sides of his head, and I pick him off the ground. And his feet are just dangling. And he starts to kind of shake. And I have this man by his head, and I've lifted him off the floor. And he's just sitting there shaking. And I felt like just snapping his neck, which will be like a twig to me. I have so much anger in me. I didn't know what else to do at that point, and I didn't want to hurt him. So I gave him a kiss on the cheek. And then I dropped him. And he starts having a seizure. And he falls against his desk, and he just starts shaking, and his eyes are shut. He just starts shaking like a worm, just shaking on his freaking desk. And I knew that he was talking about, when he said old Bill said this or that, the whole guy on the phone was, the whole time on the phone, he was getting instructions from his handler across the street, Vatican Bill. So at that point, I decided that it would be best to get out of that house. And I had a little bit of money. And I had a credit card. And so I packed up the girls, and I went down the street, which was a minute drive, instead of a 3-hour drive. And we checked into the hotel down the street where they had a pool, and we went swimming.